Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon. You know, this shooting that we had in Australia at Bondi Beach is one of the worst things you can imagine as any civilian being in a crowd, whether it's a concert, a gathering of people, and active shooters just picking people off. I can't think of anything worse than that in regards to a terrorist attack and how people can target children and people can target adults celebrating the first day of Hanukkah in this Bondi Beach, in Australia. Just absolutely outrageous. On the late afternoon of December 14th, 2025, Sydney, Australia's famous Bondi Beach was alive with light and celebration. Over 1,000 people had gathered in Archer Park for Hanukkah by the Sea, an event marking the first night of Hanukkah. Families lit the first candle on the menorah. Children played, and the air was filled with music and joy. It was a picture of peace and community set against the backdrop of one of the world's most beautiful coastlines. But in a matter of minutes, the celebration of light was plunged into an unimaginable darkness. An act of pure hatred would shatter the festivities, leaving a nation in mourning and sparking a global conversation about terror, heroism, and resilience. These are the type of events, again, all three of the people on the show tonight, myself, Professor Mike Geary, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi, we're all 9/11 first responders. So we all got a firsthand taste of terrorism and the ugliness of terrorism and the ugliness of hatred. Hatred like this has no place in this world. And what we need to defeat hatred like this, of course, on one hand, is love. We'll beat hatred all the time. But we also must be realistic, and we must have the tools to combat terrorism and combat this type of hatred, which is an outstanding police response no matter where it is in the world. We need trained police that can confront this ugly hatred, whether it's an active shooter or a terrorist. We need police that are better than their adversaries, better trained than their adversaries, braver than their adversaries, willing to take them out to save the lives of innocent people. And for the innocent people, we say almost like the mantra, if you see something, say something. And those little words, which were invented after 9/11, really can save people's lives. And we preach it all the time on this show. And anytime I talk to people, I repeat that mantra. If you see something, say something. Because in essence, that's going to save hundreds and thousands of lives down the road. So, folks, we're going to cover this story tonight. So hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your service dog, hold on to your wig. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Folks, if you're a first-timer, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, like it, and share it. And that's how it helps our algorithm and it helps our show. Joining me tonight is retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, and attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good evening. Thank you for having me on the show.
You know, Mike, I think that, we watched the active shooter at Brown University. And in that case, 2 students are reported to be dead at this time and another 9 students wounded. Horrible situation. And we thought people that have been following that case that they had the perpetrator. They kept talking about a person of interest. Yet we found out late last night that they were going to free the person of interest because he was not, in fact, the perpetrator in their opinion. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, when you think about what happened up there in Brown, and they seem so sure because of all the surveillance video, all the buildings that he came in and out of, the witnesses, and then to find out they had a person of interest who we would call a suspect, it seemed hopeful that, you would just assume that they had the right person because after all, there was so many people had seen this person. And to find out that they released this person, and now at this point, they don't have, know anybody's ID. They might not have a clue really how too much of a clue. It's disenchanting right at this point. It's disheartening. We just got to keep our fingers crossed and hope that surveillance video and other information gives up the identity of the shooter.
Mike, this case in Bondi Beach in Australia is much different than the Brown University shooting in the fact that it was a planned terrorist attack. And it turns out the perpetrators are father and son. And that is indicative of the fact that they trained for this, they planned this, and very disturbing. This is a station from Australia to give us a little background on this.
Good morning. Welcome to a special edition of Sunrise, live from Bondi Beach.
Act of terror. Children among the victims when gunmen opened fire in a Bondi Beach massacre.
Heroic act, a brave fruit shop owner wounded as he tackles a shooter and saves lives.
Panic and fear, thousands enjoying the sunshine and sand on a warm Sunday evening run for their lives.
Also, the PM joins condemnation of the ambush on a Jewish festival.
An act of evil anti-semitism, terrorism, that has struck the heart of our nation.
The bloodshed sending shockwaves around the world.
The search for answers. Police raids in Western Sydney as authorities scramble to investigate the deadly plot.
A nation reels an attack on all Australians and our cherished way of life. It's Monday, the 15th of December, 2025.
This is a special edition of Sunrise with Nat live at Bondi Beach and Mon and Chervo at breakfast.
At Bondi Beach turned to terror when gunmen opened fire.
We know 11 innocent lives have been lost. One gunman is dead. Nat is on the scene there in Bondi. Nat, a very eerie scene there behind you, a very different place last night where it was absolute chaos.
So to give everyone an update, there are 15 people dead in this Bondi Beach shooting, not including the perpetrator. I do not include him as a victim of this. He would make 16, but he was shot and killed by the police. So 15 innocent victims, 27 people are in the hospital wounded in this. And I just wanted to also introduce to us retired NYPD detective, straight out of Brooklyn. Welcome to the show, Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Billy. Was I on? Did you see me from the
beginning? You had some technical difficulties. Okay. You weren't. Your picture wasn't there. So
I'm here and ready to rock and roll.
You're ready to rock and roll. People are glad to see you. When you think about something like this, and we all go out as civilians, we all go out in crowded places. We go to concerts. We go to outdoor gatherings. I have never liked in my life being in a crowd. I just don't like crowd mentalities. I don't like the vulnerability of being in a crowd. And this is everyone's worst nightmare. Phil, your thoughts?
My thoughts are this. I did a few years of counterterrorism investigation post 9/11 when I was in the intelligence division of the NYPD. Now, this target was specifically sought after by these terrorists because of the fact it was such a soft target. It's a wide open space. They got into an area that I would say was higher than where all the victims were. You saw that little crossover bridge in some of the video, and it was like a perch for the shooters where they were actually and I hate to use this analogy, but it was like shooting ducks in a barrel. They really took advantage of a soft target, a public space that was wide open. It didn't appear that there was much secure areas in the area, and it doesn't appear that there was much in the way of police protection. Now, some of the things that could have been utilized were uniformed police officers in the area before this event. I mean, it was a Hanukkah event. The terrorists knew, the public knew, everyone knew that that people of the Jewish faith were going to go to that location to celebrate the first day of Hanukkah. So with that said, in the NYPD in New York City, we would have had many assets deployed at a large gathering like that. Now, I don't know if they did have assets, but it appeared to me that the shooting went on for about 11 minutes, and it didn't look like police interdiction happened quite quickly like we would expect in a situation like that. However, that person that tackled one of the gunmen, I believe it was the father, his name was Ahmed Ahmed. Definitely a hero in the situation. He definitely interdicted the shooter and definitely saved lives and injuries. And Bill, you have the picture there of him. He was shot several times, but he was definitely able to survive. And I saw an interview with his father. His father was Mohammed Fatah al-Ahmed, said that he worked with the police. He had served with the police, and he had the passion to defend people. So I think his police training may have kicked in if he did have that. I think it's unconfirmed, but he acted in such a great way. And I think when you saw him, he put the rifle down. I don't think he wanted to be confused or mistaken as one of the shooters. That's something that one of us police officers, people in law enforcement, would have that state of mind. So perhaps he was somewhat involved in law enforcement before this incident took place.
This was definitely a targeted attack. It was about hatred against Jewish people. 1,000 people on a beach. And this is not unusual. Look, Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated in the United States on a college campus, there was 3,000 people at that rally, and there was only about 10 security officers there. So we can point to our country too, in certain situations, not having the proper amount of security necessary to protect people. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, and as Phil's talking about the intelligence division and the pre-planning for something like this, we would have had that place locked down, drug sniffing dogs, bomb sniffing dogs. You'd have perimeter uniformed police. You'd have undercover police mixing in the crowd. And I'm thinking now, is there an issue maybe with Australia's security intelligence division of their police department? Did this guy ever come up on some sort of social media saying anything about Jews in Palestine and death to Israel, death to Zionism? That's what I'm wondering at this point, because if he had some sort of profile and he wasn't being watched intermittently or anybody, have eyes on him, I'd be very worried about that, because shooters like this, they tend to talk about it to some people ahead of time, maybe to bolster their ego, maybe to feel good, maybe to get a little support from peers who don't have the wherewithal to actually carry out an attack, but who are more than willing to pump people up. That's what I worry about now. I think people should, in Australia, in their security service, look at what they may have known and what they may have missed regarding this shooter.
Absolutely. From the chat, Jacqueline Lang, 6740. Although it's very unusual here in Australia, as we have much stricter gun laws. Jacqueline, we're finding out in the United States that stricter gun laws don't protect people. Chicago has one of the most strict gun laws in the nation, and they lead the nation in murders every year with firearms. So those laws, only good citizens follow laws. The bad guys don't follow the laws. That's why they're shooting people, And then you may argue, well, then where are they getting the guns from? And that's where the argument is, There's 340 million people in the United States, and there's over 340 million guns. So even if they stopped making them right now, unless they had gun confiscation, which there's actually some who advocate that, but they would go head on into the Second Amendment, which many people from other countries, Europe and perhaps even Australia, think that the United States gun laws are crazy. But that is written in our Constitution, the right to keep and bear arms. And I'm not going to give a history lesson about that, but that is perhaps why we do have a lot more gun crime. But people also want to be able to defend themselves, their homes, and their families. And firearms is one way they can do that. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I'm a big believer in our amendment that we have the right to bear arms and protect ourselves. And being in law enforcement, obviously, that's where I fall into that category. Now, stricter gun laws is something that I do think is a good thing in any country, because you can't just hand out firearms to people that are just going to willy-nilly take them and go shooting them. And obviously you don't want them getting into the hands of the wrong people that might do such things like these two terrorists did. But we also have a large amount of illegal guns. And I think that takes what the major crime in the United States is done by illegal guns. So I think that the focus on the illegal guns is obviously going to prevent violent attacks. But in this situation, it looks like these guns were legally attained. And again, is there some type of screening that happens when you attain a gun in Australia under the legal parameters of the law? I don't know what the parameters are. I know in our country, there's waiting periods. You have to, you can't have a criminal record. There's a lot of different things that we do in this country to prevent legal guns from getting in the hands of somebody that might want to do harm to others. But I think the focus over the last, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years has gone away from the illegal guns and focused more on the legal guns in our country. And I think that has to flip as well. So definitely I support stringent gun laws in our country and the other countries around the world. And if it could have prevented something like this tragedy, then by all means, I would like to see the laws be tightened up.
There's an interesting comment in the chat. At Devon Rex Lady, I'm a retired New South Wales law enforcement officer. I have reliable information that the event had only 2 NSWPF officers who were on a user pays arrangement. For example, the event organizers paid for their presence. Well, they have that in the United States. New York City cops request off-duty employment, and they basically hired out and what's called the people, the vendor would hire uniformed police officers. But 2 police officers for 1,000 people isn't really enough to protect those people. And perhaps what occurred, if there was more police presence, they would have maybe not committed these atrocious acts, or it would have been stopped much sooner. Let's go back to Sunrise and play a little more of this.
Those gunmen opened fire. We've seen them with those semi-automatic weapons firing into a park where people were celebrating, lighting candles, singing and praying. It was a celebration. It was a beautiful night in Sydney. People were at the markets, people were walking the streets, and then horror unfolded. And now it is one of the worst massacres this country has ever seen.
Chaos rips through Australia's most famous beach. At Bondi, victims of a vile anti-Semitic attack cry out for their loved ones, many of them now dead.
There was about 30 to 40 shots heard within the 2 to 3 minutes that were running, and just sirens blaring. It sounded like a shootout.
Gunmen prowling, waging terror on innocent families, firing bullets into the escaping crowd.
I was lying on top of my son.
Your son?
My son, 8 years old son.
2 of my babies under me, and I look at that, and it's just rifle and a pistol, and just shoot.
As the gunfire roars, a hero emerges from behind. Ahmed El Ahmed rips the shotgun from an attacker. He was shot for his act of courage.
We hope he will be fine. He's a hero. 100%. He's a hero.
Then officers swarm the attacker's bridge stronghold. Amongst bullet casings, they work on keeping one alive. Ambulance crews pick up dozens of wounded.
The ambulance tore down here. We parked under that bridge.
Under the bridge where the shooter was?
There was a kid under there, a little boy and his dad, and I got them into the car, and then I went in and I tried to help people, and it was carnage, Chris.
Overnight, heavily armed police shut down a street in Bondi, almost 50 kilometres west. Detectives trying to work out who else was behind this and why they did it.
This was a Jewish festival of celebration, the Festival of Light.
Bringing the light into darkness. What darkness came to us today.
So here's what we know so far this morning. 12 people have been killed, including one of the shooters. It is Australia's second deadliest shooting after Port Arthur. 29 people have been injured. They've been taken to hospital. One of them, a child, taken to Sydney Children's Hospital. Police have located a vehicle on Campbell Parade that had several explosive devices in it. They have taken those away. Properties around Sydney have been raided in relation to the shooting, including a property at Bondi and now this morning, one at Campsie. We have special coverage with our team of reporters across the city and the world. Let's go first to David Boywood, who is in Bondi. This area is in lockdown at the moment, David.
So this was right after the shooting. So because the numbers have been updated, there's 15 dead civilians. 27 have been brought to area hospitals. And of course, the one perpetrator, the father and son terrorist, was killed by police. The son was was wounded, but he's still alive. So when we think about this, and I think that anyone that watches this, you have to be affected by it because it's sheer hatred and it's sheer the vulnerability human beings have in trusting their lives to public safety officers, police officers, other human beings that may come to your assistance, like the hero in this picture who took the gun away from the father. I think it's very scary. And it's a different world we live in now. And, you know, people can come up with ideas that, we have to ban guns. But if you ban guns, bad guys are still going to get guns. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, this is, what we see here. It's a terrible massacre. And you wonder who perpetrated it. Are these people, part of a group that is, deals in firearms? Are they a terrorist link, like an Al-Qaeda link, a Hamas link? How long have they been in the country? Did they just get there recently? Who let them in? Who vetted them? Where they've been working? Who are their associates? That's why I think all those raids that they talk about were going on, because they're trying to track down all the people who know them. But like you talked about it before, we have 300 and something million people in the country. And statistically, we have at least one gun for every single person living in this country. That's an awful lot. But as you say, you can ban guns, but who obeys the law? The innocent people obey the law. Law-abiding people obey the law. And so people have to have situational awareness. I'm not a fan of large stadiums, malls and things like that. I always take the gunfighter position if I'm in a restaurant. We've talked about this before, but people are their own first responder. And a lot of people don't trust the police or don't believe that the police have the capability of taking care of what they need to do in order to keep us safe. Thank goodness for Mr. Ahmad El Ahmad, but you are your own first responder. And in this case, the police were lacking. Who assigns 2 police officers to a crowd like this, in a huge crowd at a beach where it's wide open? 2 officers? You got to be kidding me. There should have been 12 officers at least at that location.
A religious celebration, Mike, too.
Yeah,
Come on.
And also the people that were holding this gathering are a targeted group.
Yes.
A group that hate groups like to target.
Yes.
There's been more attacks against Jewish people throughout the world. And to think that 2 officers working a paid detail hired by the people that ran this event. It was ill-advised. I'll use that language.
And it's not a criticism of police officers. It's a criticism of whoever's in charge that should have been put in security there.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. At Jazz Muscolini 5121. And I've got to admit that I would not have sat there filming for 10 minutes. I would have had to have done something, but it's not my place to say. That's a very tough situation when someone's firing. Yes. I think your instincts are when someone's firing a gun is to take cover. And if you're with your wife and your kids, to try to shield them and try to get them behind cover. People that run, and that's also an instinct, run, get the hell out of there. But they become targets of these terrorists. And the Australian Prime Minister says that the Bondi Beach terror attack suspects were driven by ideology. So the death toll, as we said, has risen. At least 15 people have been killed. 27 are in hospitals after the shooting at Bondi Beach. The attack has been declared a terrorist incident, and it targeted Jewish Australians in the country's worst mass shooting in almost 30 years. The victims, those killed, were between the ages of 10 and 87. A Holocaust survivor, as well as 2 rabbis, are among the victims. A heroic bystander who wrestled the gun from one attacker is recovering in the hospital. And I'll put his picture up on the screen because this man right here is an absolute hero. Unbelievable. When you see someone, a civilian, take action like that, it brings tears to your eyes. It really does. It just, it lets you believe that there is still humanity and there's still heroes out there that will sacrifice their own lives to save others. Really very touching. Phil.
Yeah, and the thing is that he was a Muslim, and we believe that the terrorists are Islamic extremist Muslims that were radicalized. So you have, peace-loving Muslims that just want to, have their own religion and go about life and try to do better. And then you have these insane psychopaths that get radicalized, and they carry out a terrorist attack against Jews. And we see this, it's not something that's uncommon in Australia as well as in other parts of the world and in our own country. So we have an anti-Semitic kind of atmosphere lately over the last few years in our country, and it's obviously spread throughout the world. And when you think about the radicalization of these two people, when you have a father and son and it's a team effort, and I believe it might be much easier to radicalize the son if a parent is kind of giving you normalization of the crazy things and the violence, and telling that violence is acceptable in the behavior to, get to the goal of whatever it is these extremists believe in. So, again, just to point out that a person who took matters into his own hands and stopped one of those terrorists from killing people, maiming people, happen to also be of the Muslim faith. So you can't paint a wide brush and say that all Muslims are like this. You have the outliers that become radicalized and carry out these horrible terrorist attacks. And I think that in this country, where I did read that there were several attacks in recent months and in the last year or so where synagogues were burnt, and there's been an anti-Semitic rhetoric going on in the country. And there's been media reports where they're pointing out, and they're pointing at the prime minister and the government officials as to not taking it so seriously. And I believe that the son, what I read was that he had been investigated a few years ago for association with a Sydney-based terror cell, Islamic State, ISIS. So he was on the radar screen, and every time one of these things happen, we always find out that there were red flags and there were people being monitored, but however, they're not interdicted. So I think maybe a stronger approach at interdicting some of these so-called ISIS followers is what needs to be done.
Absolutely. This is from NBC News, and this shows the hero, Ahmad al-Ahmad, take on the father, the shooter, whose name is Sajid Akram. We're going to put this up on the screen and play it so you can watch.
You see the man in white there running up and tackling that suspected gunman. There is a struggle, and you can see he appears to wrestle what looks like a shotgun out of that man's hands. Now, the individual in white has not at this point been identified, but local leaders are hailing what they say were extraordinary acts of personal courage by people who just jumped in at the scene. It is very likely that that man saved some lives by appearing.
You know, smartly, Ahmad al-Ahmad put the gun down, or else he would have been shot by police because they didn't know who the active shooter was. They didn't see his act of bravery. So that indicates he probably does have some police training because he knew enough to put that gun down. Let me go back to the video.
To disarm that gunman. We know that at least 29 people were taken to hospital. Among them are 2 police officers. Authorities are saying police were on the scene and engaging in a gun battle with these shooters within just minutes. Police are also saying that they found a car linked to the killed gunman, which does appear to contain improvised explosive devices. Now, the bomb squad there in Sydney is probing that vehicle. They are looking for more clues. They are looking for more details about the motives. And Willie, a massive police investigation is now underway, but we can already say at this point that this is one of the worst gun massacres in Australian history.
So they're saying, someone in the chat is saying, Devin Rex lady, Ahmad was a former Syrian police officer. So there you go.
His training kicked in for sure.
His training kicked in. And look, he knew how to take that gun away from that. And there is a way that you do it where it's almost like a martial arts move where you go. We were trained on that when someone grabbed your nightstick, how to twist it and then pull it back. And if someone held on to it after you did that, you could break their wrist. So he used a maneuver like that because he very easily took that rifle away from that the shooter, the one shooter who was the father was Sajid Akram, age 50. And to answer questions, his guns were all registered. They were all legal guns. And then they found out in the course of the investigation that he had an improvised explosive device in their vehicle that was parked nearby. Mike.
Yeah, this is what Phil talked about, red flags. This, with this person, he gets into the country. We don't know how long he's been here. He's in the country. His son is he's known to have followed an ISIS cell, and he's been being radicalized. The father has the firearms. I just wonder, did the father get those firearms recently, or did he have them for quite a while? Because if he'd gotten them after the son had been found to have been on some sort of radical jihadist website, being a customer there and getting radicalized, that would worry me. The red flags, they mean something. We've seen it. We saw it a year ago in the Maine shooting with the National Guardsman up in Maine, shot, I think, like 17 people, and there was red flags all over the place. So, it's only as good as the law enforcement agency and the municipality have the political will to go out and actually be proactive with these people.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share us, make comments. And also, if you want to contribute to Police Off the Cuff financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels, and you can become a member of the Police Off the Cuff family. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states for Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE New York in New York. Folks, this is an update from CNN.
Anti-Semitism, an act of terrorism on our shores in an iconic Australian location, Bondi Beach, that is associated with joy, associated with families gathering, associated with celebrations. And it is forever tarnished by what has occurred last evening. This was an attack deliberately targeted at the Jewish community on the first day of Hanukkah, which of course should be a joyous celebration. And the Jewish community are hurting today. Today, all Australians wrap our arms around them and say, we stand with you. We will do whatever is necessary to stamp out anti-Semitism. It is a scourge and we will eradicate it together. The Australian Federal Police and ASIO are working closely with New South Wales authorities, and the briefing we've just had, we've had the AFP there, and the AFP Commissioner will return to Australia today. We will dedicate every single resource that is required in responding to this. To the brave responders, first responders, including ordinary citizens who acted yesterday, thank you for what you do. People rushing towards danger to show the best of the Australian character. That's who we are, people who stand up for our values. Flags will fly at half-mast across the country today as we pay our respects to all those lost and all those who have been injured. And we conclude by saying that yesterday was indeed a dark day in our nation's history, but we as a nation are stronger than the cowards who did this. I thank world leaders who have reached out, from President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, others right around the world have reached out to Australia at this time, and we thank you for your sympathy and your solidarity with our values. Australia will never submit to division, violence or hatred, and we will come through this together. We refuse to let them divide us as a nation.
Very well said. And, it has to be, there can be a lot of rhetoric after these things, but there has to be policies in place that prevent things like this. You have to have a strong anti-terrorism unit in your police department. You have to have intelligence on the ground and everywhere. And also let your community, let your people know. And I sound like a parrot almost repeating this all the time. If you see something, say something. Because the eyes of the public are so much more. There's so much more people in the public than there are police officers. So use your eyes. And when you see something, report it to the police. Let them know about it. If you hear or see something online that you think is a little bit crazy, that maybe someone is involved in some activity, some nefarious activity, let the police know about it. That includes Instagram, Twitter, all of these sites where people post their intentions. We used to have people go on Facebook and admit to shootings that they did the night before. They're not the brightest individuals on this earth. So again, if you see something, say something. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, when you see something, say something. That's great. But you have to have politicians putting it into effect. You have to have police chiefs who have the will to stamp this sort of thing out. I just want to say thank you to Jazz Muscolini for the $9.99 super chat. Very much appreciated. But you have to have those policies, and you have to send a clear message. And I'm sorry, but the Albany's government has sent messages, like other countries have sent messages about the legitimacy of Hamas and their goals. When you do that, you legitimize in certain people's minds the radicalization efforts and the goals. And so it would be nice if they were consistent in their messaging, and they're not. And so therefore the people, they never pay the price. Who pays the price? The common folk in cities like in New York. We see in New York, and now we see here in Bondi Beach.
Well, Mike, you're right. And the politicians, they talk a good game about gun control and gun-free zones. But then when criminals get arrested for shooting people, the carceral policies don't allow them to be prosecuted. So you want good people not to have guns, legal guns. But when bad people have illegal guns and use them in crimes or to shoot people, you don't want to prosecute them. Something's not right there. Phil, I can see you shaking your head.
Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Bill, you just made a great point, because if there was a legal gun owner in that crowd, let's say if you, me, or Mike was in that crowd or close to where those two animals were firing the shots, perhaps it could have been stopped a lot quicker. The other thing about see something, say something. These two guys went to that location. They never retreated. I don't think they had an escape plan. I think they thought they were going to die at the location in a hail of bullets. So that tells me, was there behavioral changes before the attacks? And this goes out to the Muslim community, because if you see something and you say something, let's face it, the Muslim community is going to be the one that's going to be so-called harassed now at this point, because it were Muslims that did this attack against Jews. So if you reach out to the Muslim community and you say, listen, we know that you mostly are peaceful people, but there are some people that are off, they're radicalized, they're possibly dangerous. If you appeal to those people, there had to be some behavioral changes within these two individuals when they went out to do this attack. They probably reconned the location. So there could have been some red flags that were missed. I'm appealing in that general sense to say, if you see something, say something. Bill, you're right. We say it a lot, but this is something that could have prevented the 15 that are dead. I know there's 20 something that's in the hospital, but it says 42 injured, what I read. So if we could err on the side of caution and possibly, like you said, Bill, you see something online, it doesn't sound right. Maybe they're going to do some type of attack. You report it to the authorities. Let the authorities investigate it and say, well, you know what? This was a false alarm. That's okay. And if we upset some people, I'd rather upset some feelings than have 15 people dead and 42 people injured in such a horrific terrorist attack.
Absolutely. This is from Fox News.
Being shot by police was an immigrant who lived in Australia on various visas. The son, who was injured, reportedly was investigated by police a few years ago for his association with members of a Sydney-based cell of the Islamic State, or ISIS terror group. He was not deemed a threat at the time. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says he'll introduce new security measures to protect the Jewish population. Critics say he hasn't done enough, and he wants to tighten up already strict gun laws. The 50-year-old gunman had legal possession of 6 firearms. Now all are recovered. Back to you guys.
All right, Greg Palcott, thank you.
So now, in the wake of the attack in Australia, President Trump with a message of support to Jewish Americans, telling Fox News this yesterday: we celebrate proudly, be proud of who you are, end quote. The president also saying this at a Christmas reception of the White House last night.
And I think today we can first say loudly, we celebrate Hanukkah, because that was such a horrible attack. That was a purely anti-Semitic attack.
All right, Paul Morrow, former NYPD inspector, Fox News contributor. And Paul, good morning to you. There's a ton to go over here. Let's start in Australia. I'm reading that the father was from Syria. I'm reading the father is Palestinian. I don't know which is true. I know the father went to Australia in 1998. The son was born there.
Right.
You heard Greg's reporting. 6 years ago, the son was investigated for links to ISIS, and then that went quiet. And he had 6 firearms found at the scene yesterday. You've been watching it since.
All right, a couple of things occur to me. First of all, one of the things we have to recognize, Australia doesn't have a First Amendment. All right. And it sounds like a nuance, but it does matter. They don't have anywhere near the constitutional protections we have on speech. Where does that hit the ground? If you're doing intelligence work inside of Australia, you have a lot more freedom to do what you would like to do than you do here in the States. And having been in that position, having done 15 years of counterterrorism, I can tell you that your proscription, the thing that you're always bumping up against when it comes to speech in America, religious and political speech, you can only go so far. It's heavily, heavily lawyered, both at the federal and the state level. Where am I going with this is the following. He was on their radar screen. There are going to be inevitable questions. And I'm not saying the Australian intelligence agencies dropped the ball, because a lot of this stuff can be needle in a haystack. But if he was on their radar screen, and if there were subsequent things where they should have picked it up, Albanese and the authorities there are almost certainly going to face questions as to why, because they can go a lot further than we can here.
Could you talk about the bravery of the bystander that sees the father shooting and disarms him?
Yeah, you see these things where bystanders just step up in the most unexpected ways. And, a good aspect of it is the fact that it turns out he's a Muslim as well. And, you can't ignore that nuance. And that came out fairly early. And I think that was an important fact to get out from the media. And I think the thing that struck me is he doesn't shoot the father. He doesn't shoot the main perpetrator here. Now, at least under American law, certainly in New York, you would have been justified in doing so. Why? Because he's already demonstrated that he's a danger to others. So as a result, as he goes back towards his son, who's the other shooter, you have to be saying to yourself, is he going to pick up another gun? Is he going to start shooting again? And yet the guy showed amazing restraint. He doesn't shoot the main shooter that he sees as that shooter flees. And in fact, he subsequently takes 2 rounds himself, one to his hand and one to his arm. A real hero. God bless him.
It's remarkable to watch. I mean, people all over social media and watching the Fox News channel yesterday, you can watch the entire incident. It's 11 minutes long, and it's right there for you.
It is.
With regard to Australia, they've had numerous incidents of anti-Semitism just in the last year and a half. A synagogue was burned, Hitler graffiti, cars set on fire, a child care center was defaced, arson attack on Shabbat. That's just a few of them, Paul. This is primarily Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was going earlier, which is the fact that in light of that environment, and then you hear some of the stuff that's been coming out. We've seen Miranda Devine's been doing a lot of reporting in this in the New York Post, talking about the fact that there have been numerous warning signs here. But what is a labor movement government in Australia has been sort of bending the other way to make sure, like, for instance, they put in a liaison against anti-Semitism relatively recently because they were kind of sort of shouted into doing it, but simultaneously they made sure they did the same thing for Islamophobia, despite the fact that there's nowhere near commensurate as many threats and harassment incidents to the Islamic population as to the Jewish population. Now, you don't want to see harassment or threats to any population. I understand that. But you know what? You have to face facts sometime and put in your resources where they should be. And it doesn't look like they did.
So one of the things that we'll have next hour, Dan Senor, he'll be on, and he has the Call Me Back podcast. So one of the things he talked about on there today, one of his guests, is that there is intel about a state actor trying to actually physically globalize the Intifada.
Iran.
So I'm wondering about what the United States can do to help share intelligence and try to get ahead of this, to the extent that we did that. We've done that for a long time, since after 9/11.
So Australia is part of the so-called Five Eyes, all right, which is a grouping of essentially the Anglosphere, for lack of a better term, sharing intelligence that could be, particularly in counterterrorism, that's beneficial to all parties. There's a lot of reporting coming out in various areas and some in the Israeli media about how the common denominator among a lot of this stuff is Iran. Remember, Iran just took a very good hit from us, and we hit their nuclear program. They're not ones to take that lying down, so they're going to pull what levers they can. And let's look across the board here. You've had 3 American soldiers killed in Syria. You have 5 Islamists of various varieties trying to drive a vehicle into a Christmas market in Germany. Thank God that was stopped. We have the incident in Australia. And right now, you have to say that the Brown incident has to remain on the radar screen until we know otherwise. So when you look across the board and you start to say to yourself, is there a common denominator? We don't know this, but it does look like at the very least there's an anti-Semitism sort of metric blowing through it. And then if you look at, well, who could be inspiring that? Could be Iran.
Right.
Paul Morrow, I think he's one of the best, if not the best, talking head on television right now. So knowledgeable. He's a retired NYPD inspector. He's got a law degree. He's very smart. And I mean, he makes you proud to be a member of the NYPD because he's so knowledgeable, he's so articulate, and he doesn't say stupid things. He says really learned things, and his experience comes out when he's talking about these attacks. You know, he spent years in the intel division, spent years in counterterrorism, so he knows exactly what he's talking about. A lot of these, I don't know why they have all these Secret Service guys on as talking heads. What did they actually do? You know, they investigate counterfeit money. That's the extent of their investigation.
A lot of dignitary protection, Bill, not a lot of investigation.
Yeah, but they're always on all these channels, and you know, I don't understand. FBI, I can understand. I don't understand some of the people, maybe because they just talk a good game. I don't know. So yeah, look, anti-Semitism is running rampant throughout the world, and Jewish people, and when they gather, they deserve protection. They deserve security. They deserve the acknowledgement that they are a target by other groups. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, you got to see, you know, as Paul Morrow talked about, all this grouping right before, you know, Hanukkah. You'll probably see this sort of thing. There'll probably be a fatwa issued against Jews, probably, you know, during Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, or, you know, against Christians at Easter or Christmas. You know, he's right. You have to get serious about this. We were very serious about this, about our security after 9/11, after that horrific tragedy, which the three of us witnessed. And then it turned into, well, political correctness takes over, and we can't call one group because we don't want to offend them. And when you don't want to offend them, you start appeasing them. And when you appease them, then you legitimize their beef. And when you do that, in addition to their radicalization, you give them succor and you give them the ability to legitimize in their minds what they're doing. And I think Paul Morrow had it right. You've got to put your resources where they're best used. And we have to get serious again in America, or we'll have another attack similar to 9/11.
Yeah, it's sort of sad, but these attacks are going on all over the world, and luckily many of them are thwarted. And there was just one recently. They in the Midwest, they were setting up to bomb a bunch of places, and the FBI was up on it, and they thwarted this attack. You know, we only hear about when these things happen. We don't hear about all the things that law enforcement has prevented, because you can never prove that you absolutely prevented a horrific attack until you show the evidence behind it and what these subversive groups were actually planning. You know, the candles of the Hanukkah menorah, which the attackers sought to extinguish, have become a symbol of defiance. In the days following the attack, hundreds gathered to light candles and lay flowers, choosing unity over fear. The attack on Bondi Beach was a story of terror, but it also is a powerful story of heroism, sacrifice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. It serves as a tragic reminder that while darkness exists, it will never overcome the light. Phil, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts are this. Earlier, you talked about see something, say something, Bill. Going back to the Brown situation, the Brown University, there was some recent pictures and video put out of the perpetrator. You don't get a good look at his face. However, somebody knows that guy, can recognize his gait, his stature. That's what's going to be the thing that's going to turn that case, where we put somebody in custody that's responsible for that horrific thing. With regard to this case, terrorism against Jews, anti-Semitic terrorism cannot be tolerated. It cannot be tolerated against anyone. However, it spreads fear amongst the Jewish community and the communities around the world. We need the Muslim community to not go along with this stuff, to call it out, to point it out. And again, if they see behavior that appears that it might lead to violence, they have to notify the authorities. The people that were killed thoughts and prayers go out to them, to their families, the people that are injured. Let's hope for speedy recovery, and let's try and turn the tide against these type of things. We named several things that we think may have been red flags. Let's start doing a better job at protecting people in general.
Absolutely. Mike, your final thoughts.
I think that we should all here in America, especially if you're living in a large city, be hyper vigilant this holiday season. Because with the Jews and the Christians, we are the main culprits for all the woes of the third world, according to their doctrine. So people need to be hyper vigilant, be very aware, and if you see something, say something, do something. Absolutely.
100%. Folks, that's our report tonight on the Bondi shooting. Let's hope that we're not going to be seeing more of these active shooters and these terrorist plots as the holiday season approaches. And again, I'll say it one more time. If you see something, say something. Thank you, Professor Mike. Thank you, Phil Grimaldi, and all you folks listening. Have a great night, and God bless everyone.
Stay safe. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.